The Communist Party of China continues its persecution of the spiritual group Falun Gong. Evan Gershowicz's conviction for espionage in Russia. After a crash that killed 6 teens, NTSB said people underestimate marijuana's impact on drivers. This is Dr. David D. Schein for the special episode of Saving America with our weekly update. Here are some of the top stories that we've been following. The Communist Party of China, also known as the CCP, continues its persecution of the spiritual group Falun Gong. This is one of the most compelling and disturbing situations across civilization in the whole world today. Communists like Z don't like religions or quasi-religions competing with their Communist Manifesto. That includes a pretty harmless sect called Falun Gong, which started around 1992. They follow 3 truths: compassion, forbearance, and do 5 meditative exercises of their practice each day. By now, 70 to 100 million Chinese have begun to follow this pretty simple concept. It sounds a lot like Buddhism and Hinduism, which of course are very popular within various Asian cultures around the world. So in 1999, the geniuses at the CCP decided to eradicate Falun Gong. Now remember, this is 70 to 100 million people. They've been using illegal arrest, brainwashing, and torture, and perhaps the most horrible thing yet, harvesting organs from live prisoners. Yes, our ineffective U.S. Department of State says it's opposing these inhuman practices. To date, the only thing I've seen them do is to block importation of Chinese human organs, since they may be the result of this practice. To me, it stinks of the Holocaust all over again. They claim, this is the State Department, to talk with the CCP. This is a silly statement, and I don't know why we're still talking to them. The civilized world needs to seal off the CCP until they change their approach to both their own citizens and the rest of the world. They're becoming a very dangerous force in the world, and that's one of our central themes here for Saving America, because it also helps to save the world if we can rein in the craziness that's going on over there. In the United States, there is a group called Friends of Falun Gong. It's a nonprofit that was founded in the year 2000. I encourage you to check them out. I've extended invitation for a representative to be interviewed for Saving America. Speaking of failures of our Department of State, what do you need to know about Evan Gershowicz's conviction for espionage in Russia? The Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershowitz was sentenced to 16 years in prison on a totally bogus spying charge that follows the usual Russian kangaroo court proceedings. The WSJ and the American government have consistently maintained that this gentleman is not a spy in any way. By the way, he does speak Russian. He was born in the USA, but both of his parents fled from the USSR at an earlier point. So he may have been targeted for that reason, since, as I think everybody knows by now, Putin is trying to reconstruct the USSR, despite the fact that it failed in classic fashion. White House National Security spokesman John Kirby said Wednesday, Russia has failed to justify Evans' continued detention. He, like fellow American Paul Whelan, is simply being used as a bargaining chip. Big excitement, John Kirby. What are you doing about it? The State Department's been using some strange metrics to decide who to swap. Brittany Griner was serving 9.5-year sentence for cannabis possession. She appears to have been a DEI pick, since there was no sense to her being exchanged for a much higher value asset, arms dealer Victor Bout, who was imprisoned in the U.S. The Russians got the better end of that deal. Griner has openly expressed her dislike of the USA. Gee, thanks, Brittany. Marine veteran Trevor Reed, who was serving 9 years in Russia for assaulting a police officer, has been swapped for Russian pilot Konstantin Yaroshenko, and he was serving a 20-year sentence for cocaine trafficking. I'm recommending that the failed Biden state and the authorities begin arresting everyone from Russia who they've got running around here, whether they're mock diplomats or so-called journalists who are probably over here spying on us, and make sure that we have quite a stable of folks to swap. This is easy, folks. It's not hard, and our State Department needs to measure up to the international standard, which unfortunately means dealing with Xi in China and Putin in Russia. Another Biden failure as Secret Service director has resigned, and she resigned when she finally got under bipartisan pressure, which is very interesting. But I think that we have enough Democrats in the House and the Senate who can read and write. That's not a given, folks. But what's happening is that they are realizing that some of their lives may be jeopardized now or in the future if we don't have a better Secret Service. So I think that's a positive. After a crash that killed 6 teens, NTSB, National Transportation Safety Board, their chief said people underestimate marijuana's impact on drivers. This is an American tragedy where 6 high school girls in a small car in Oklahoma crashed into a big semi-trailer truck after reportedly running a stop sign in 2022. The NTSB researched the accident and said the teen driving may have been impacted by marijuana and distracted by the other youngsters in the car. And in fact, I seem to recall that in many states, a teen driver must be in the car either with an adult or simply cannot be in the car with another teenager. Sounds like this either was not enforced in Oklahoma or it was not the policy in Oklahoma at the time. The NTSB also observed as more states have legalized recreational marijuana, teens and adults tend to underestimate the risks of driving under its influence. My regular audience knows that I am a hardcore about driving under the influence of any substance that impacts a driver's judgment. I'm openly hostile to legalizing marijuana. It is a mind-altering drug. I grew up during the time of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. In fact, that's the subject of my current book in process, A Cheap Education. And it sounds romantic sometimes, but broken lives and worse can result from mind-altering substances. I recall a friend of mine from college who did enough marijuana, not heavier drugs, that he dropped out of college before he finished his junior year. I'm pleased to say that later he was able to get his act together and is enjoying life as a semi-retired person today. So good ending, but it was rather disturbing to get reports to me from his roommate in real time of finding this young man laying on the floor staring at the ceiling instead of doing his homework. Yes. Clinton-appointed federal judge David Carter says this: California teachers were right to severely punish a girl 7 for writing the words "any life" under a Black Lives Matter drawing. Why? Because the idiot judge says she's too young to have First Amendment rights. I again encourage all rational people to flee the state of California, featuring high taxes and limited freedom. By the way, this Judge Charter is also the one who interfered with attorney-client privilege and ordered the transfer of 4 emails from Trump attorney John Eastman to the House January 6th committee. In my humble opinion, I think Judge Carter should lose his bar card. It's time for us to crack down on people on the bench who do not follow the law. Biden's Defense Department labels pro-life organizations as terrorist organizations during an anti-terrorism briefing. The presentation specifically targets groups like National Right to Life and Operation Rescue, which have long been pillars of the pro-life community. These organizations are dedicated to peaceful advocacy against abortion, grounded in the belief that every life is valuable and worth protection. As noted before, I favor a rational approach to abortion, and we must always support the life of the mothers when hard decisions have to be made. The vast majority of doctors do not want to perform abortions. So when they say the life of the mother is in jeopardy, the authorities need to accept that. This is my take on the news. Thanks for joining me. This is Dr. David D. Schein for saving America. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on your favorite platform.